There's something quietly exhausting about being someone who struggles to trust, not because you want to keep people at a distance, but because part of you genuinely wishes you didn't have to. You watch other people open up easily, form connections quickly, take people at their word without a second thought, and somewhere in the back of your mind, you wonder what that must feel like. Because for you, it doesn't work that way. Trust isn't something that arrives naturally. It has to be earned. Slowly. Carefully. Sometimes over months or even years. And even then, there's that quiet voice in the background reminding you to stay alert, to pay attention, to not get too comfortable. This isn't about being cold or unfriendly or difficult. Most people who find it hard to trust are actually some of the most thoughtful, observant, and deeply loyal people you'll ever meet. They're not suspicious of everyone for no reason. They've simply learned, somewhere along the way, that openness comes with risk. And that risk, for them, has felt very real. So today, we're going to explore that. Why some people find it genuinely difficult to trust, what that might look like in everyday life, and what it can quietly cost them, even when they don't realize it. If any of this sounds familiar, you're not alone, and you're not broken. You're just someone whose relationship with trust has a history. Think about how trust is built in early life. As children, we don't start out suspicious. We arrive in the world completely dependent on the people around us, and for the most part, we trust them without question. We trust that someone will come when we cry, that we'll be heard when we speak, that the people closest to us are safe. But what happens when that expectation gets interrupted? When someone who was supposed to be reliable wasn't? When honesty was inconsistent, or care came with conditions, or promises were made and then quietly forgotten? The lesson doesn't always come in the form of a dramatic event. Sometimes it arrives in small, repeated moments. A parent who was emotionally unpredictable. A friendship that ended in betrayal. A relationship where someone turned out to be very different from who they appeared to be. Over time, those experiences don't just teach us to be careful with specific people. They begin to shape how we approach trust in general. And here's something worth sitting with for a moment. The mind is extraordinarily good at pattern recognition. Once it identifies a threat, it starts scanning for it everywhere. Not because you're paranoid, but because on some level, your nervous system is trying to protect you. It's filing away what hurt before and flagging anything that looks similar. That's actually quite intelligent in its own way. The challenge is that it doesn't always know when to stop. Some people who struggle with trust become incredibly observant. They notice small inconsistencies in what people say versus what they do. They pick up on subtle shifts in tone or energy. They ask themselves questions others might never think to ask. Why did they word it that way? Why are they being so nice? What do they actually want? This kind of attentiveness can look like overthinking from the outside. But from the inside, it often feels less like anxiety and more like clarity. Like paying attention is simply what you do. Like everyone else is just not paying close enough attention. And that's one of the more complicated parts of finding it hard to trust. It can feel protective, even rational. Because sometimes it is. The instinct to observe before you open up has probably saved more than one person from a situation that would have hurt them. The ability to notice red flags early, to not rush into things, to take your time before making yourself vulnerable. These aren't flaws. They can be genuine strengths, but they become complicated when the same mechanism that protects you also prevents you from fully connecting. Because trust isn't just about keeping yourself safe. It's also what makes intimacy possible. It's what allows someone to really see you and for you to really see them. When it becomes too difficult to extend any trust at all, relationships start to feel like they're happening at a slight distance. People might sense that something is being held back, even if they can't name it. And you might feel, despite being surrounded by people, quietly alone. There's a version of this that shows up in friendships. Someone might have a circle of people they enjoy, but only one or two they ever truly confide in. They're warm, engaging, even funny in social situations. But when it comes to sharing something real, something that actually matters to them, the door stays mostly closed. Not because they don't like the people around them, but because vulnerability still feels like an exposure they're not quite ready to risk. In romantic relationships, it can take on a different shape. Someone might fall for a person, feel genuinely connected to them, and still hold back, still wait for the other shoe to drop, still find themselves analyzing a text message longer than they'd like to admit, looking for some hidden meaning that might not even be there. They want to believe, but believing fully feels almost dangerous. Like letting themselves believe too much is what invites disappointment. And in some cases, they might even unconsciously test people. Not in a manipulative way, but in a very human way. Sharing a small piece of themselves and watching what happens. Pulling back slightly to see if someone notices. Giving someone the opportunity to prove they can be trusted before offering anything deeper. What's underneath all of that is usually not cynicism. It's hope, actually. A kind of hope that's been careful for so long it's almost forgotten how to be hopeful without bracing itself at the same time. Here's something that often gets overlooked. People who find it hard to trust frequently hold themselves to an incredibly high standard of reliability. They show up when they say they will. They follow through. They keep secrets. They take their commitments seriously. And so when others don't do the same, it doesn't just feel disappointing. It feels almost incomprehensible. Like, how could you say you'd do something and then just not? For some people, this creates a quiet kind of isolation. Because the bar they hold for themselves, they quietly extend to the people around them. And not everyone meets it. Not because most people are untrustworthy, but because most people are simply more casual about these things. And that gap between how seriously someone takes their word and how casually others give theirs can make connection feel harder than it needs to be. There's also something worth saying about the way trust and self-worth can intertwine. When someone has been let down enough times, a quiet story can begin to form. One that sounds less like, that person wasn't trustworthy, and more like, maybe I'm not someone people stay consistent for. That's a painful shift. Because now it's no longer just about being careful with others. It becomes about doubting whether you're truly worth the kind of trust you're looking for. That belief, when it's there, rarely shows up loudly. It hides behind practicality, behind self-sufficiency, behind the very reasonable-sounding idea that it's better not to need people too much, but underneath that independence, there's often a longing for someone to just be what they say they are, consistently, without an agenda, without conditions. The deeper truth about people who struggle with trust is this: they usually want connection just as much as anyone else. Sometimes more. They've thought about it more, felt the absence of it more acutely, and protected themselves from the pain of losing it with everything they have. The question is never whether they're capable of trust. It's whether they've yet found people and experiences that make it feel genuinely safe to try. And that's not a personal failure. It's a very human response to a very human experience. Trust, at its core, is a kind of risk. It requires believing in something you can't fully control. And for some people, learning to take that risk again, carefully and at their own pace, is one of the quieter, more significant forms of personal growth there is. If you recognize something of yourself in this, take a moment to consider not just where that caution comes from, but what it might look like to extend a little trust, slowly, in the right direction. Not all at once. Not blindly, but enough to let someone in a little further than feels completely comfortable. Sometimes that's where the most meaningful connections actually begin. If this resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever struggled with trust or known someone who has? What do you think shapes that experience? We'd love to hear your perspective. And if you're interested in more content exploring human behavior, relationships, and the quieter patterns of our inner lives, subscribe and join us for the next one.